Hey guys, welcome to Mr. Smith's Kitchen. Brian Kitchen, as always. And today, yeah, I said last week that we weren't, I didn't know if I was going to put out any videos or not, but I thought, I'm not really cooking anything this week. At least nothing new, at any rate, nothing that we haven't already done. So I thought to myself, I'm getting ready to can, or process, some pork. And I'm making some barbecued pork, and which will turn into shredded barbecue pork for sandwiches down the road at some point, I'm sure, or add to a dish. And I thought, well, let's film it and see what happens. I'm actually using my new setup, which is kind of weird because I can see myself over here now on my laptop, as I'm using a live feed to record on my new using camera. We've had this camera for quite some time. And it's an awesome camera. It's a Canon Rebel. And I've just now, like I said in a previous video, had the capability to put it on my laptop. My old laptop wasn't compatible with it. So we're back to a learning curve as far as that goes. But I think we'll be okay. But today we're gonna process some barbecue pork. It's not hard to do. It's really kind of easy. It does involve a pressure canner though, so you're going to need one if you don't have one. This is something we can't water bath. But pressure canning has a lot of nuances to it, really. It can, it's a little more forgiving with as far as ingredients go, but you still want to follow the rules when canning. But anyhow, that being said, if you're new, welcome. Every week we get new subscribers, and I think that's amazing. It makes me happy, to know that there are people interested in being part of our neighborhood and eating some good food and baking some good stuff and, processing some things, learning about all things food. And if you are new, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. If you're a new subscriber, thank you and welcome, as always. Don't forget to hit the like button or thumbs down, whichever. I'm not choosy. I prefer the like button, but dislike's okay. Don't forget to subscribe if so inclined. Notification bell is right next to the subscribe button, let you know my videos come out. And don't forget to share. That way, what all that does is it puts us out in more people's feeds and makes our community bigger. It gives us a bigger neighborhood. Of good people who are sharing good food and being good neighbors and friends. And I think that's pretty awesome. You can also check us out on Facebook. We've got a Facebook group, Mr. Smith's Kitchen Facebook group. And yeah, I do believe that's it. Comments, always welcome. Just be nice. It's okay to disagree. Just think before you type. Alright, so let's get down here to the counter and we'll go over what we got going into this bad boy and the steps we need to do it. Alright? Hold on for me 1 second. Okay, down here at the countertop / stove, getting ready to do this. Things you'll need, pretty much other than your pressure canner and some jars, and I'm guessing because I've got roughly 8 pounds of pork here that this will make 6 to 7 quarts of barbecued pork. But you will need a stock pot of some sort. And the first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to put about a teaspoon of olive oil, you can use vegetable oil, whatever you like, into the bottom of our pot, and we're going to get this warmed up to a shimmer. It should be shimmering, smoking lightly. And then we're just going to sear our pork. I cut our pork up, I cubed it up into about 1/2 inch to inch, 3/4 to an inch pieces. And we're gonna sear those real quick. So let me get this warmed up and then we'll go ahead and get things seared. Okay, so we're shimmering. Our oil is shimmering and we've got a little bit of smoke starting to happen. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my pork cubes. I'm just going to do this a little bit at a time. I'm going to put these in. I'm just going to sear them real quick. That way we get that seared flavor in our barbecued pork. And then, but we don't have to cook it all the way through because we're going to can it. In processing it, we'll cook it. But we want to get a little bit of mixing. We're just going to do a little bit at a time. You're going to start with, I'm going to give you the numbers on the original recipe. I'm doubling it, so I'll have twice as much. But you're going to start with 4 to 5 pounds of pork roast, and you want it to be cubed into 3/4 inch to 1 inch pieces. Okay, so we got our pork nice and seared, so but not cooked all the way through. Give me 1 second there. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Oh, it's hot.
Hot here.
It is hot. Turn that down a little bit while we're waiting. Okay, so what I'm talking about is like right here. See how it's got that nice brown look to it, but it's still pink. You know, still pink in the center. And that's pretty much what we want. So the next thing we're going to need to add to this is 1.5 cups of chopped onion. Now that I've got my pork out of there, because we want to remove the pork, 1.5 cups of chopped onion into the container here, and we've got all that pretty burnt and crispy nubs from the pork in there also, which is going to add flavor. Now the original recipe to this is they didn't cook the pork at all, but it's okay to cook the pork. It's not going to hurt anything. What you want to watch for is adding and taking away stuff. You know, if you're going to use oil, and if you're like, oil is kind of a no-no in canning unless it's called for in the recipe. If you do use it like I just did, minimal, you know, is what you want. Just because it can coat and it can sour, it can do a lot of bad things if you use too much. Well, not even a lot of bad things. So I didn't use more than a teaspoon. That's all I needed in this pot. So we've got those browning, as you can see right there, and we're good there. We don't want to fully cook them because they'll turn to mush in the canner. And then we're going to add 3 cloves of garlic. You know, and I'm going to try to give you some weights in grams, but the onion is kind of what you make of it, because you want it to be 1.25 cups of diced onion, or 1.5 cups of chopped onion. So that can vary a little depending on how big or small you chop it. To this, we're going to add 1.5 cups of ketchup, you know, or 375 grams of ketchup into this. We're going to add, and that's just standard old ketchup. I'm using Heinz, I think, or Heinz. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons or 32 milliliters of Worcestershire sauce. We're going to add 1/4 cup, 60 milliliters of apple cider vinegar. And that vinegar, what it does, not only does it add flavor because it's barbecue sauce, but that vinegar, with it being acidic like it is, will also help, you know, keep your pH balanced in your mix. You give that a quick stir. Then we're going to add 2 tablespoons, 30 grams of just regular plain old yellow mustard. Get that turned down a little bit, because we want to bring it up to a boil, but not quite that quick. We're going to add some brown sugar, 1/2 cup, 110 grams. That's packed brown sugar, so you're going to pack it down into your measuring cup so it's nice and tight. Or 110 grams. If you have a scale, you can just measure it out. Give that a stir. Then we're going to add some honey. We're going to add 2 tablespoons, 45 grams of just regular all-natural honey.
Daddy?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
well, get a towel and go get a towel, and there should be one there in the drawer. All right, 2 tablespoons, 45 grams of honey. Sorry, Abby's home with us today. She's not feeling real well, and she just spilled some milk. I'm just glad she's hanging out with me in the kitchen. Get the rest of that mustard out of there. And then I think that might be all. Ketchup, brown sugar, apple cider vinegar, Worcestershire sauce, mustard, honey, and garlic. Yep. And we'll bring this back up to a boil. Or actually, before we bring it back up to a boil, we're going to bring our pork, and we're going to pop that back in there. Juices and all. Yeah, we want to leave nothing behind. That way we get this good and coated. And like I said, you don't have to sear your pork. I just think it adds that extra bit of flavor to it. Then we're gonna get this mixed up. Get everything coated, and then we're gonna bring this back up to a boil. After that, I mean, that's literally it. I mean, as far as what to do with getting it ready to be canned. So let me get this up to a boil. We'll bring it to a boil, let it go for about 5 minutes. And then when I come back, we can start the canning process. All right, I'll be back in just one moment. Okay, so we're at our 5-minute mark on our letting this boil. So, and what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go ahead and get them jarred up, and we're gonna put them right there in that canner. Yeah, right there in the canner, in which I have a specified amount of water in it. Oop, sorry. Still getting used to this camera. It's funny how you get used to using one thing for so long. Right? For 2 years I used my my phone, and now I've upgraded, so to speak, but it's gotten weird. But I went ahead while that was getting up to a boil, and I was letting it boil for 5 minutes. And what I mean by boil, like a slow, steady boil. You don't want it to brr all over the place. We're just looking to let everybody become friends. So now that we got that going, I got my pot on, and I've got it on warming, right? So that way we can, we're not putting hot food into cold water or a cold pot. We want everything to be balanced. That way we don't break any glass or anything like that. So the next thing we're gonna do is I've got my jars. I've washed my jars, dried them, and I've had them sitting in hot water. All right, that is an approved method. And it's very hot water. Now, as far as your lids go, if you're new to canning, this is a lid right here. This is a ring. The ring holds it on during the processing, while it's processing. With the lids, if you're using the ball lids, I can't speak for everybody, but I know at least with ball, you don't have to sterilize them anymore. You don't stick them in boiling water and let them boil for a few minutes. They're past that with the type of adhesive they use. As long as you're processing longer than 10 minutes, which we are. If you're processing less than 10 minutes, then you want to sterilize your lids, okay? Which means you put them in a small pan full of boiling water and you let them boil for a few minutes, and then you leave them sit in that water. You don't take it out. Now, all we have to do to process these, or to get them in the jars, we want to fill them up with our barbecued pork to 1 inch below the top. 1 inch on ball jars or most mason jars is right there, right where that lip is. So we'll take our funnel, and we're gonna put them in there. Now, if you buy a funnel kit, they come with a really cool tool that has the measurements. I don't have that. Instead, I've got this chopstick here that I've had forever that's got 1/4 and 1/2 and 3/4 and whole inch markings on it. That way I can double check myself. But I know in this case, with it just being 1 inch, and I know that rim is 1 inch, we're gonna do good. So all we literally have to do is take our pork and put it in the jars. You want to try to get it balanced. Now, if memory serves me right, the last time I made this, I made a single batch. This time I'm doing a double batch, and it was 4 quarts. It made 4 quarts ish, and I think that's it. But we're just going to simply put our meat up there to the 1 inch mark, like so. We'll tap it down a little bit, just like that. And it's okay to push it down if to get space. You just don't want to push it down. Yeah, you don't want to smash it down and not give it any space. There are a few things that you don't want to smash down like that, because it'll eliminate the space that's in it. So we'll get that down, and man, that's hot. We're going to take a fork, or you can take your tool or whatever, and we're just gonna make sure there's no bubbles in there, no air pockets, nothing like that, and just like so. And then, like I said, I know that that ring on the jar is 1 inch, so I'm not gonna fuss with measuring it because I know. Next thing we're gonna do is you can either use vinegar or just hot water. We want to make sure we get this ring or the lip of this clean. All right, you don't want anything on the lip, or you run the risk of it not sealing properly. Then we'll take our lid, stick it on there, take a ring, put it on top of that. You want to make sure your lid's on there even, and you want to put it on finger tight. Finger tight is you're using your fingers to tighten it as much as possible. Don't death grip it and crush it on there. Finger tight. And then all we have to do is put it in the jar or in the pot. And it's basically wash, rinse, repeat, right? Put our pork in, just like such. We'll tamper down a little bit, make sure we maximize our space, so to speak. And you can also do this in smaller pint jars, but I personally, we don't do much of the pre-made stuff like this in the smaller jars just because there's so many of us that eat on a fairly regular basis that it's just more economical to do quart jars. So that, and it's a space saver. All right, we're at our inch mark. Take our wet paper towel here, wipe the rim off. So we're good. Put our lid on. Make sure I only got one lid there. Ring. Finger tight, not death grip tight, finger tight. Put her in the pressure canner. All right, well, I'm gonna finish up the rest of these, and then when I get back, we'll talk about how we're gonna can these. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, we got all our jars in here. Like I said, the water's warm. These are warm now. You'll notice that this jar here, and I actually have another one here, just have water in them. No lids, no nothing. The reason for that is I only got 5 jars. I thought I'd get 6, but it's a crapshoot. I mean, the reality of it is it can be a crapshoot on how many jars you're going to get. How big did you cut your meat? How much did you get in it? Things of that nature will all help determine how many you get. So in this case, out of the almost 8 pounds of pork I had, I got 5 jars, 5 quart jars, which is great. I mean, that's 2-3 meals at least, probably 3, even 4, depending. So what do we do next? All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna grab my lid right here. Real quick, because I don't think I touched on it earlier. The water I put in the bottom of this, it's like 3 quarts of water. And if you're using a Presto canner, which that's what this is, a Presto pressure canner, there's little notch lines that show you, and it's the very first notch line. But in general, if you follow the instructions on your pressure canner, it'll tell you how much water to put in your canner. And I highly recommend, if you're new to canning and you get a canner, read the directions. Read the book that comes with it. We're gonna place it on. There's arrows right here that line up with the arrow right there. We're gonna shut it, right? That's locked in place now. I'm gonna turn my stovetop up to not quite high, but pretty close, as high as it'll go. And we're looking for 2 things to happen now. And we can't move on to the next step until that happens. This little button right here is going to pop up. Once it pops up, which this is a safety lock, okay? There's two things on here that are for safety. Not only does it lock in there, but this pops up, locks the lid on, and won't let you turn it. And then this little black button back here it's made of rubber, and what it does is if this gauge gets into this caution area or it builds up too much pressure in general, that will pop. That way your canner doesn't explode. The exploding canner thing is kind of a myth anymore. So now I've got that on high. I'm gonna let this rock and roll until that pops up. Once that pops up, we're gonna set our timer for 10 minutes and we're gonna let as much of the air escape out of here and a little bit of steam, that's what you'll see, come out of here for 10 minutes, and then we can move to the next step. All right, so I'll be right back in just one moment. Okay, so where we're at is, see how the piece just popped up on there? So the piece just popped up. So I'm gonna set my kitchen timer for 10 minutes. And what I'm looking for is the steam and air to come out of there, which I don't think you can see it real well, but it is coming out. And once that 10 minutes is up, we're going to put this on, the weight on, right there. And then we'll talk about what to do after that. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, so our timer is going off. We're going to shut that off. So what to do next? We're going to put our weight on there, and there's a couple different types of pressure canners like this with weighted gauges. This one right here, we just put it on, and we're going to watch this gauge. All right, this gauge is what's important. This is kind of the important step, the one you want to pay attention to. Some of the older canners have what looks like a round gauge, and it rattles, and it doesn't have this gauge here. It's just got the weight. So what we're going to do is, let me stand up here. I've been sitting down. And let me get you down here a little closer to the gauge. There we are. This is so cool working with this new camera. So right now I've got it on close to high on the burner setting. When it gets up to about 5, I'm going to turn my knob down a couple notches. So I'll go from almost high to about 7. And then as it gets to about 7, 8 on here, I'll turn it down to 5, 6. You don't want to make big moves, right? You don't want to, let's see if I can get you over here to that, yeah. What I don't want to do, and I'll show you on this one, this is the one I'm using, but you don't want to like crank it like that, right? You want to, just baby steps, a little bit at a time. Here in Ohio, with our elevation, because your pressure is based on your elevation, so you want to look that up, and it'll be in your manual if you buy a pressure canner. If you own one, you probably already know. But at our elevation, we want to be at 11 psi. Once I get this dialed in, and I know my oven well enough, my stovetop well enough now to know that where to be at as far as my settings go on my stovetop, which is about 2 to 3 on the numbers for your stove, I can hold it at 11 to 12. It's okay to go a little bit past the number you're supposed to be at, but you don't want to go below it. As soon as that hits 11, I'm going to start my timer, and we're going to process these quart jars for 90 minutes. If we were doing pints, it would be 75 minutes, but we're doing quarts. So I'll let this get up to 11. I'll start my timer for 90 minutes, and when I come back, we'll talk about what we need to do after the timer goes off and we're done with our time. All right, I'll see you here in just a second. All right, so timer just went off. What do we do next? The next thing we need to do is we need to wait until we turn our stovetop off, right? So we just turned our stovetop off, and if I get in there for you. So now that we've turned our stovetop off, all we have to do is nothing. We wait until this gauge gets down to 0 and this button drops. All right. Once those two things happen, we're going to wait another 10 minutes after that. All right. That way everything has a chance to settle down completely. Because this thing, I don't know if you can hear it or not, but it's still hissing and bubbling even though everything's off. once it gets down to 0 and that drops and we've waited our 10 additional minutes, well, once that drops and it hits 0, we can take this weighted gauge off. Do not take it off before then. You will get burnt because the steam will just come pouring out, and your jars will do what's called siphoning, and you'll lose every bit of liquid that's in them. We don't want that either. So leave it alone, down to 0, pin drops, don't touch it, it's hot. That was really dumb of me. After those two things happen, we take the weight off and we wait 10 minutes. So when I come back, we'll have waited on, we'll have done all that, and we'll take a look and see what we got. All right, be back in just 1 second. Okay, so our pin dropped. As soon as it dropped, I took our weight off. It's been 10 minutes, so now we're gonna take our lid off. And when we take our lid off, when you take your lid off, you should always take it off away from you, just in case you don't want any steam come up and hit you in the face. That could be a bad lesson in life. A valuable one, but man, it'd be a painful one. And we'll go ahead and set this lid down right there so it doesn't break. And let me bring us out a little bit. Oop, wrong way. Woo, 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 woo. That way we can see everything. I'll let you show them. I'll show them to you as we bring them out. Maybe if I can tell you, working with new cameras is going to take some getting used to for sure. Okay, so I know you probably can't hear it, but they're still hissing. This was 240 degrees Fahrenheit for, almost an hour and 15 minutes of the hour and a half it was in here, and it has taken forever for it to cool down. But so what we want to do is we want to use our tongs, and these tongs, when you use them, see this plastic around here? If your tongs start to lose that, don't use them. As these jars slip, you will burn yourself. And you want to make sure you use canning tongs. You can use regular, I wouldn't even recommend using regular tongs, just because of that. But there we are. I mean, there is our barbecued pork in a jar, and what we're going to do is we're going to set these out right here, and we're going to let these cool. Now, we want to give them an inch or so of space. You don't want to butt them right up against each other, because you want that air to circulate around them. Inside these jars is just powerfully hot, and I mean powerfully hot. And give me a second here, and I'll show you the inside of this container, because I want to show you what happens when things siphon. Because it's siphoned a little bit, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Siphoning happens. No one knows. I couldn't tell you exactly why it happened. It could be one of like 50 things that happened and while this thing was canning. I did let it go. It got well above 11 psi. That could have caused it. I might have had something just a little too full, something wasn't sealed just quite right, and that's okay because we're still in good shape. But let me bring the camera over here real quick, if I can, and I'll show you what it looks like when it siphons. See how that water is just slightly discolored? It's not clear water anymore. That means that some of that liquid got out of one of the jars, and it could just be I didn't have something sealed quite tight enough. But does that mean it's bad? No, absolutely not. It actually is okay. I mean, siphoning happens. That's a fact of life sometimes. I get more excited when I don't siphon, and we've been canning for a borderline a decade plus now. It just happens. And I usually know it's happening before I even take the lid off, because you'll be able to smell whatever it is you're cooking or processing. Like I said, that's just fact of life. But what we'll do is I'll let all of this cool completely down. I'll get those two empty jars out of there. drain the water, clean my pressure canner real well, including the lid, but you don't want to get your gauge wet. Like I said, follow your manufacturer's instructions, but I'll wipe the lid down real good with some hot soapy water. I won't submerge it. I'll rinse out my pressure canner itself real good. I'm going to let these jars cool for about 12 to 24 hours. And then on the top of them, there's a spot for a date. I will put the date on it and I'll write down on it what it is. Even though I can visually see what it is, but I still want to write down what it is and when we made it. Now, once again, I'm basing most of these instructions off of ball jars and lids and a Prestone canner, because that's what I'm using. So with ball, they'll guarantee their lids to go be good for a year and a half after you process. If they're sealed, year and a half, and that's pretty solid. Most stuff in our house doesn't last that long. If you hold on for me 1 second, I'll show you real quick, just so we don't have to wait to see what we're looking for with the when they're done. Hold on for me 1 second. I'll run and go get something I've already processed and we'll take a look at what to do. All right, hold on. Okay, did you miss me? I missed you. So here's what we're looking at as far as things we'll do. Like this right here is a jar of chicken. I think we did together a while back, but I have what it is and the day we made it. We made this December 14th of last year. So it's only a couple months old. But when these cool, I'll take the rings off of them. You see this doesn't have a ring on it. I'll grab it by the lid and I'll hold it. See how that's being held by the lid? That means it's properly sealed, right? And if you look, I mean, there's a little bit of that chicken that's sticking out the top that doesn't have any liquid on it. That's okay, as long as it's not below about the halfway mark, you're fine. If you can meats and you do what's called a cold pack, where you just put the raw meat in there, lid them and stick them in, no cooking, no nothing, you'll have that because you're relying on the juices in the meat to fill this up. But you want the juices to be at least halfway. If you notice when I put the cans in there, the two we did together, the barbecue sauce wasn't all the way to the top. You know, it was about halfway, and then the pork juices added to that. So anyhow, that is how I do my barbecue pork. If you do can, I hope you give this a try. If you're thinking about canning, this is a good one to start with, believe it or not. It's really easy. Not a whole lot of moving parts, things like that. So that being said, I don't know if we're going to do a video tomorrow for baking, but we might do something tomorrow. I may even take you downstairs and we can look at the basement. So until then, I love you. I love you very much, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Tell somebody else you love them and you love them very much. All right, I will see you tomorrow or next Wednesday. Talk to you later. All right, love you. Bye.